Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Today I'm talking with Andrew Rowland. He's a driven entrepreneur and business owner born and raised in Minnesota, where he developed a strong work ethic and a community-focused mindset. He's been married for 12 years with 4 kids, and he balances his professional ambitions with a very deep commitment to his family. In 2018, Andrew left the corporate world to launch his own home care company, driven by a passion for making a meaningful impact in his community. Since its inception, he has grown the business through strategic networking, building trusted referral partnerships, and most recently, executing a very successful merger that has expanded the company's reach and capabilities. Andrew's entrepreneurial spirit and dedication to excellence continues to drive his mission to provide compassionate, high-quality care through his thriving home care company. Welcome, Andrew. It's great to have you back.
Chuck, thank you very much. Nice to be back.
You bet. For our listeners who weren't with me the first time we interviewed Andrew a while back, we did a podcast on how to do business development. And it wasn't about home care, even though that's Andrew's business. We used that as a jumping off point for how can anybody in any business do better business development without stabbing people with their business cards. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast with Andrew. Today, we're going to talk about something completely different. You just went through a successful merger, and we're going to talk about how to own and grow a business. Just kind of generally, wherever that takes us, what does it mean to grow a business? How have you done it successfully? What are some things you learned that you won't ever do again? What are some things you've learned that you would advise other people to do? So when you hear the topic owning and growing a business, what's the first thing that comes to mind about how to do that, or how you did that, or your experience doing it?
For me, I think like many others that go out and start a business, it started with an idea. And for me, it started back in 2008. I was thinking of building and developing a home, and it was a single family home, and it was just to do assisted living better. And there were some legislative things that came down the way that stopped me from doing that. So I pivoted into home care. But really, to answer your question, it just started with an idea for me. And I had this dream, and I told myself no matter where I was at in life, I'd quit my job and start this business. And so I think prematurely I did that and learned quite a bit along the ways in the first 6 months of just, when my expectations met reality. That was probably my first growing point.
So when you say prematurely, I hear in that there's probably some things you wish you would have known before you went ahead and hit the ground.
Yeah, the easy ones, financial resources in place, maybe taking some of the first couple steps in forming the business. Maybe I would have done more market research to really understand, do I know exactly what I'm getting into? And I did actually a fair bit of that, and spending some time courting some of the franchises that are out there within home care. And that was really illuminating to me. It actually gave me confidence for the business that I was about to get into. And then just the more talking I did with folks, I got connected with actually operators within, that had their own businesses within home care. And that was really helpful for me also. And that they were generous enough to chat me up, and they gave me some of their time, that most valuable thing. And so I am endlessly appreciative of that still to this day. So you don't know what you don't know in starting something like that. And so you get quite the crash course, and those things, you start learning them quicker than maybe you were prepared to or wanted to or were ready to. So maybe that's where that premature thing comes up.
Well, that was going to be my question. Having built 13 businesses, I'm pretty sure with every single one of them, I have said, I think I jumped the gun here.
Sure.
I think I started this too quickly. But the reality is just that you don't know what you don't know. And over the years, I have taken great solace in learning the difference, I started all the way back with the Greeks and the Romans and how they planned and how they did things. And I take great solace in understanding that one of the principles I've come up with in life that I think has been proven to be true is that planning doesn't create movement. Movement creates the plan.
It's a great way to say it.
And that doesn't mean that we should go helter-skelter, full speed ahead without doing anything. You said you did research, and you did a lot of research, but you probably did as much as you knew to do. It's like learning things about skiing. You did as much learning without skis as you could, but then you had to get on the skis, and then you got more learning. And I
Right.
just wonder if you really jumped the gun, or was it the same experience I had? I coulda, shoulda, woulda. It would have been nice to know these things before I started. But frankly, for the most part, I wouldn't have known them unless I got started.
That's very true. I don't regret doing it. Let's be clear about that.
But you wish you could have known these things beforehand.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you kind of maybe hinted at something. The way I view resources now is different, right? Money and capital, that's a resource, and I think about it way differently now than I did. People are resources, and I think about people differently than I did then. And so maybe that's a lot of that had to go into it as well. And that's just the growth that comes in spending. I started my business almost 8 years ago now. And so I should think differently about them. And I definitely do.
Yeah, and again, I'm a slow learner, and it took me 13 businesses, and I'm sure I've got a few more in me until I finally figure this out. But I did have to learn how to relax around the idea of planning. We talked about this in this course Fast Track that you took, that we talked about in the last podcast, that we need to learn to live with a bad plan.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. Took me many businesses, but there's no such thing as a good plan until you've actually moved on the bad plan that you have. And the bad plan that you have will get you to where you have a good one. And time and again, I thought I had a good plan. I researched, I did everything I thought I could do. And then I went down there, got my skis on, went down the hill metaphorically, and found out, yeah, I don't know half of what I need to know. But I didn't know that until I put the skis on. And it's really uncomfortable for us. We don't like that. My mom taught me never to do anything without figuring out first. The Small Business Administration says, unless you have a contingency for everything that can go wrong, don't move. We're taught to really get it right, get it perfect before we move. And there's nothing in life that supports that desire. You can't learn how to ride a bike by doing all the research. You just got
No, you can't read a book on that.
No.
Yeah.
And yet there is good research you should do. You should read what it means to have a brake and
Yeah.
bars and a seat. And you should know some stuff, know as much as you can, but at some point you have to get on the bike, and then you have that bad plan of getting on the bike. You thought it was going to be like X and it was Y, and it was nothing like what you thought. And you would never learn how to ride a bike until you got on the bike. So I think that's really principle number one of owning and growing a business is don't be afraid to take measured risks that won't kill you, but you're just not going to figure this stuff out until you get on the bike.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as time goes on, your risk thresholds change.
That's another part of that.
But that doesn't go without the earned wisdom and experience that
No.
comes along with that. And I definitely, good enough is better than perfect because it allows you to give yourself permission to take the first step. It is okay to fail, right? You've created your own safe place to fail.
Necessary, in fact.
It is necessary and it's unavoidable. So it is unavoidable.
Yeah, I love what you said there because it reminds me of Jim Collins's book from the 1990s, Good to Great.
Yeah.
And his premise in that book was great companies were never satisfied with good. And I want to write a book that I think would complement his book, but might also challenge it a little bit. My book would be Great is the Enemy of Good Enough.
Well, you're just assuming you're going to start at great.
Right. Yeah. And we look at one of my favorite examples, because most of us know it, is Amazon.com. Jeff Bezos propped up a stupid little website to sell used books online. And Jeff Bezos was packing books in the basement of his home. And that was good enough. He didn't start with what he's got, and nobody gets to great by starting with great. They get
Yeah.
to great by starting with good enough. And it's uncomfortable because there's all kinds of flaws in that and messiness and the minimum viable product concept. We don't
Hmm.
like that because we're just taught that it's supposed to be really good before we get started. And there's nothing in life that's like that. I think it's Mike Tyson who said, the heavyweight boxer, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you iterate and then you change.
And then you iterate, but you didn't, your plan got better because, oh, you realize, well, this is how it feels and this is how he's going to swing.
Uh-huh.
Now
Yeah.
I can react to that.
Yeah, I won't do that again. Yeah, great. Or, geez, that worked out better than I thought. I'm really glad I did
Exactly.
that.
Let me
That's
do that
amazing.
again. I didn't think that would
Yeah.
work out. It worked out better than I thought. I'll repeat it. So
Yeah.
planning doesn't create movement. Movement creates the plan. Get out there, take a risk. Don't take stupid risks, but know that you're not going to have it perfect. And the only way you're going to get a great plan is by starting with one that's actually bad. It's good. It's as good as you can make it, and you make peace with the idea that it's full of holes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the action is definitely the most important takeaway.
Yeah.
I can sit down as well as anybody and put together the most complicated budget from top to bottom, and I could explain to you every single line. And then at the end of it, tomorrow, what'd you do with that?
Yeah.
It's an all for naught or so what? So now go do something with it. So yeah, yeah.
And I don't want people to hear us saying you shouldn't plan because you're not saying that. And I'm not saying that. You said I did research. I did as much research as I could think to do. So I think it's good to do research, but then we need to get moving. And the key, what the research shows about how to be successful, I think it's Frank Lapira. He's a Frenchman, did a study in 2011. What makes entrepreneurs successful? He studied 600 of them. And one of the main things he found was that they move quickly on ideas. They don't sit around and plan them forever. But the second more key thing, in my opinion, that he found was that successful entrepreneurs, as soon as they got moving, they started looking at the data and saying, okay, am I moving in the right direction?
Mhm.
It's not just helter skelter, full damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. It's get moving and always check in on the data. I call it taking soundings. Get your boat moving, but then
Yeah.
constantly take soundings to see if it's getting shallower or deeper. And the combination of those two things will keep us from ever doing anything that will actually be stupid enough to hurt us badly. But it is get moving, and that's hard for us to do. We want to have it perfect before we get moving. Not going to happen.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
I wish. What's another thing you've learned about growing a business? That's one, is you did the research you could and coulda, shoulda, woulda. I never had enough information when I started. What's something else you could maybe shorten somebody else's learning, shortcut their experience with?
Surround yourself with the right people. And that's on the employee side, that's in referral partners, that's with peer advisors, that's with just friendly business folks that are willing to give you honest advice or criticism as well, just that feedback, whether it's good or bad, that's really important. Recently going through this merger, business partners are a great thing. Man, it's really nice when you got a couple more smart people around there thinking about the same things in the right way. And maybe you come up with different conclusions, but you're not in a vacuum and you're certainly not in an echo chamber, or at least you shouldn't be. And so that's been really useful for me since, probably over the last 6+ months, 6, 7, 8 months.
So I want to stop on both those things because those are really big. First one was surround yourself with the right people, and the second was, hey, a business partner can be a really good idea. Surrounding yourself with the right people. I have a friend who did research. He's actually passed away, but 25 years ago, he did research on what makes for a successful leader, not successful business owner, but like a Winston Churchill, and what made certain leaders fail, like a Mussolini or a Hitler or fill in the blank. And what he found was that he couldn't find any one thing that made them all successful. He found one thing that was common with all of those who were not successful. And that was this: they did not surround themselves with the right people. They surrounded
Yeah.
themselves with yes men who would tell them what they wanted to hear. That was the number.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and that's the rugged individualist mindset. I don't need input. I don't need other people. I got this. And boy, I failed at that in the first few businesses. And I've had to learn that over my life that it is so valuable to put myself in a place where people can actually speak to my life and to my character and to my business and to the things I'm doing. So I love that you landed on that. To me, that's the right people. The right people will call BS on my life and on my questions, and they'll question my business.
Yeah.
You said even
Yeah.
criticize when it may be criticism. Well, I don't care. It's better than getting yes and finding out that the Russians are actually right outside my bunker before, I'd like to know this stuff beforehand. And so I really appreciate that one. And then the second one was business partners can be a really good idea. I want to pause on that one because that can be really important. In my first book, I said business partners are the worst possible form of business unless they work. And then they are the best. But they rarely work. That's pretty much a quote from my first book. And I've done anecdotal, but I've done a lot of watching what makes partners work. And I found one thing, at least, that I found pretty much across the board, with rare exceptions, makes for this partnership is going to work, or, this partnership is doomed. And that is this: the people knew each other and were relationally accepting of each other and possibly even friends of each other before they went into business together. So you look at Hewlett and Packard and Ballmer and Gates and Steve Jobs and Wozniak and all of these famous partnerships, and the two guys who started Google, they were all friends before they started that business. And I know you knew this guy, the other guy you merged with. You've known him for quite a while. You didn't
Yeah,
start.
he was somebody I mentioned earlier as far as doing my research into starting a business.
Yeah.
And so there is years as far back as 2017 up until present. Nothing, I had never even considered it
Right.
until one day.
But you knew each other. You had no pressure to be in business together. And then when the opportunity came up, you thought, well, because I know this person and I have been able to relate to them without that pressure, I feel a lot more comfortable that we could do this together.
Yeah.
It's like marriage, arranged marriages, the statistics say they work out. They actually don't, but there's a lot of pressure to never dissolve the marriage. Date first, get involved with people on a non-pressured basis instead of trying to find a partner to do this business with. Now find someone that you can actually be friends with and then say, well, would they be good partners? So that would be my advice on that second one. Is absolutely, it is the best form, and I envy you for that. I finally am in that position, but for years, for decades, I didn't look for and I couldn't find the right people to do
Mhm.
this with because we weren't friends first. So
Yeah.
really important stuff is make sure that you are culturally and relationally compatible, not just skill and experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the culture thing, I mean, this gets talked about a lot. I definitely know that it gets talked about a lot. I've been part of companies and worked for other companies where it was, it was a sign on the wall and nobody knew it was there. Somebody took it down because they didn't know what it was. And then I also worked in companies where it was a living, breathing thing and it was notable. You could feel it. Everybody talked in the same ways about certain things, and that was great. And so I did a lot of thinking and reflecting on that as I started my business to, defining core values. What does it actually mean? Do I even believe in these things, and what are they, and how does it translate? Can I articulate to other people? So that's a really important thing. I can't really say enough about the value, a value-driven, relationship and business. Yeah.
All right, we got room for one more. What's one more thing you've learned over the years, whether you've learned it painfully or you've learned it joyfully? Hey, this really worked well. You should try this, or yeah, don't do that. Is there one more thing that pops into your head? It doesn't have to be, but if there's one more thing that pops into your head, we'll kind of close out with, yeah, let's try this one.
I think as the owner and in that seat is the looking ahead. Planning for today is different than planning for tomorrow. And that I get a lot of excitement. That gives me hope. It allows me to think and dream and put some creative energy into things. And so for my business to be also a creative outlet, maybe you wouldn't think of that maybe just naturally, but in the planning, the looking ahead, what are opportunities out there? And for home care, there's lots. I mean, there's growing the business just in the services you can provide. Are there different payer sources we could get into, or is there some other delivery of care model that might be out there? So I spend quite a bit of time thinking like that, and how do I use my current business to get me to that next step? And then the list of the to-dos come down, and now there's more planning to be done in and around that. So that, I suppose that kind of speaks to the planning and the action thing. We spend the time planning, you get to look ahead, dream a little bit, explore new opportunities, meet new people. And a lot of it is the meeting of, you get to meet new people. You don't know who else is out there and who's done it before you, and what impact might that have on my business. And maybe somebody needs your help, and that's always a meaningful thing as well.
Boy, I've been surprised over the years. I think my rugged individualist in me hasn't wanted a lot of help. And so I've perceived at times that maybe I can't be as helpful to others because I'm not expecting them to be helpful to me. So it always starts with me. And I've learned over the last 10, 15 years to really invite engagement and curiosity about my business and invite people to care about me and my business. And that was a real hard thing to figure out how to do. But as a result, now I do feel like I have something to offer other people more than I did in the past. So great learning, great growth on your part. I hear curiosity in what you're talking about, that you just got to stay curious. And if you're constantly asking questions.
Yeah, it puts you out there into the unknown, which forces you to learn and forces you to grow. To get, I suppose, maybe lazy in your own development that might be the icky way to say it versus stay curious. Because there's a lot of opportunity out there. And it does. Everything takes time as well. So
yeah, I mean, that is the downside is, I've stopped growing.
mm-hmm.
Well, the upside is stay curious. What if you stay curious? And you're right. I think one of the reasons I wouldn't want to do that is because it can be uncomfortable and awkward.
Yeah. It will be.
I'm done growing because I'm done being uncomfortable and awkward. Well, I'm sorry, if you're done growing, then what are you doing here?
Yeah. The question I ask in interviews quite often is, tell me about something you're actively learning.
Nice.
And it's amazing what people will say. You often catch people off guard, and they don't have a good answer for it because they aren't.
Head scratcher. Yeah.
And maybe you'll get somebody that they can't wait to tell you about what they're digging into. And that would go back to the value thing, right? There's a value that both of you and that other person have, and you share that. Your curiosity, your approach to life, your willingness to put yourself out there maybe in a different way. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Well, we've just scratched the surface, but these are some really important things that you've learned over your years as a business owner. And I would love for people to get an opportunity to get a hold of you, either to understand your business better, or maybe to partner with you. Maybe they have potential clients for home care for your business, or they just want to learn more about how to connect with and maybe mentor with and co-mentor. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, great. Easiest way to find us would be online at promisecareinc.com, or email me directly. It's andrew@promisecareinc.com. I'm always happy to talk. My door is always open, and I understand the business owners and what they go through, and those that are curious about starting new. I'm happy to talk and share all of my experiences, good and bad. So yeah, I would encourage it.
Andrew, this has been fun. I appreciate your heart for business, for your family, your heart to grow. It's been a lot of fun having you on, and I look forward to getting feedback on how this has helped others.
Chuck, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.